Stronger.
Imagine a world without choices.
Stronger.
Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. UIC.
Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. It isn't that.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. This is Joseph Patterson. Glad to be with you again here tonight to talk about quite a developing situation in Jamaica over the last week and a half. You would have seen where we had some very unfortunate activities in our financial sector. We're going to talk about that tonight. So good evening, Nadine Lee. Good to see you on. Welcome, JMH. Good to see you on as well. Desmond Myrie, good night. Welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. Looking forward to having a good chat with all of you on this subject here tonight. I'm hoping to be able to take some calls. So if you want to call in, the number will be placed on screen so you can call in momentarily. It is a pity that we have to be talking about scamming once again, and this time it's something which has hit at the core of our people because of the celebrity involved. But I was just reading not too long ago a blog that was written by Richard U. Blackford. The title of his blog was Stocks and Securities Limited Massive Fraud Highlights Jamaica's Systemic Corruption. And indeed, what we're seeing in Jamaica is systemic. In fact, what we're seeing is a culture of corruption in Jamaica, where the entire country from top to bottom is corrupt and fraud has become the norm. This particular case that we're looking at is quite high profile because of one of the personalities that was impacted. That's USAIN Bolt. So it has brought it home for a lot of people. And we have heard the Prime Minister expressing his disgust in line with the Minister of Finance expressing the same. A little late in coming, but expressing disgust. But there's more to this than meets the naked eye. There's a lot more to this, and I want us to dig into some of that here tonight. But let me just share a bit from the gentleman, Mr. Richard U. Blackford, who wrote a very excellent article on the subject on a blog called Jamaica.com. He says, the Jamaican Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, finally broke the government of Jamaica's self-imposed silence when he spoke late Thursday, January 19, 2023, on the massive fraud at Stocks and Securities Limited, SSL in Kingston, Jamaica. Dr. Clark gave the assurance of a full and thorough investigation hours after he announced that the executive director of the FSE, Everton McFarlane, has resigned from the post 1 day after facing the press about the multi-billion-dollar fraud at SSL. Unconfirmed reports hinted that the monies involved could run in excess of US 30 million or Jamaican 4.5 billion, making it the single largest fraud case in Jamaica's history. The revelation that in 2017, Stocks and Securities Limited SSL was flagged by the Financial Services Commission FSC for its culture of non-compliance and mismanagement of clients' funds came as a surprise to many when the news of the massive fraud began to make the rounds in Jamaica. According to a report in the Jamaica Gleaner newspaper, the particular finding was contained in an explosive 8-page report prepared by the FSC in February 2017 ahead of a meeting with SSL representatives who were trying to convince the regulators not to suspend its dealer's license, as such a suspension, even for a single day, would have led to a total destruction of the company and caused massive destabilization within the island's financial sector. The FSC also pointed out that the SSL has been a problem institution, especially concerning its financial position. The FSC has also noted that for the 5 years and 6 months leading up to February 2017, the company had been operating under its directions and has remained a problem institution for failing to file its annual report for the period up to June 30th, 2016, failing to file audited accounts within 90 days of the close of a financial year, and its practice of granting credit to connected parties in violation of orders issued in 2013. My friends, let us pause there. Those basic information alone were enough to indicate that SSL should not have been operational up to the point where we now have the situation we're dealing with today. Unfortunately, the regulators did not do enough. That's very clear. The question is why. You have also seen from what I've just read for you that the company was engaged in lending monies to persons that they ought not to be lending money to. In fact, they're not really a lending institution. So a lot of things were going on that should not be going on at the organization. But let's continue. Let's continue and look at this situation closer. In the circumstances, one could easily argue that the culture of non-compliance and fiduciary violations were aided and abetted by the FSC's unwillingness to exercise the powers under its hand and bring the company to heel. That these revelations had been made a full 5 years earlier and had not resulted in any serious enforcement by the FSC is not only does it justify the immediate departure of the executive director, Everton McFarlane, but it also provides a basis for a complete house cleaning. McFarlane had indicated at a disastrous press conference called on Wednesday that we are aware that there are a number of questions that are of public concern. Questions, for instance, relating to the FSC's past actions, what we knew, when we knew, and what we did. Our ability to answer such questions at this time is constrained, he said. The fact is that the FSC has always been in possession of the tools that the agency needed to address the issues. It reported, but did nothing. The result is the monolith of a fraud perpetrated on unsuspecting Jamaicans by a group too callous to show regard for those who had reposed in them their trust and confidence to manage their funds, in many cases their life savings. Now, it took the government of Jamaica more than a week to even offer a comment on the development. This must be seen as a major embarrassment, even as every major news and sporting channel around the world was reporting on the massive fraud in Jamaica, which has snared the former world and Olympic champion and primary ambassador at large for brand Jamaica. The government's tardiness in getting out ahead of this has severely damaged the island's reputation, not to mention the damage to the confidence of Jamaicans at home and in the diaspora, who are constantly being wooed by its embassies and consulates to take their funds and their investments to Jamaica. One of the best places in the world to save and invest, they were told. Jamaicans everywhere have expressed their disgust with the authorities for their lethargy and tardiness in addressing the issue, even as a substantial number of Jamaicans view the response as providing escape routes for individuals connected to the company and associated with major players in the governing Jamaica Labour Party. For many of these commentators, this is just one more instance of the pervasive corruption that has taken root in the country and have feasted on its heart, has now begun to consume the Highlands' soul. Now, of course, the article mentions the Jamaica Labour Party, but the PNP is no doubt just as guilty and just as entangled, as we shall soon see. The UIC has long made it very clear the connection between the private elite, the oligarchy, and the two major parties, who are the very ones that form our government and set up our regulatory agencies, and in various ways, shapes, and forms influence all of these entities, the persons who are appointed to head them, and persons who are employed to them. You know, the nepotism and all of that. So we really don't have a system of governance in Jamaica that protects the interest of the Jamaican people. Now, the article continues. Jamaicans everywhere are horrified that such a caper could have been orchestrated against other Jamaicans who have worked hard to accumulate their personal savings, and that the perpetrators would target among all persons USAIN Bolt, arguably the island's best son. Bolt, despite the multiple overseas options available to him, had always concentrated his investment activities on the island, especially since his retirement. He has served as a magnet for attracting outside investors into Jamaica. Yet, the Jamaican system, revered in the chopper culture, has now turned to consume even has taken hold in Jamaica, my friends. And it is crippling us. It is crippling us. This culture is crippling Jamaica. And we can find no solace in government or opposition. Why? As I will show you in a little bit, in the same way that they are the architect of the crime problem we face here in Jamaica, they are also the architect of the corruption problem we're faced with in Jamaica. All of the corruption, all of the fraud, all of the scamming, the chopper culture you see in Jamaica has its roots and foundation in two gangs that have managed to take control of our country, take control of our people, and shaped our culture and institutions right down to the babe on the breast. They have managed to infiltrate and inculcate with a culture of criminality, corruption, and fraud. It is so pervasive, so systemic, that it doesn't matter what shape or form the person takes, whether they're pretty or ugly, skinny or fat, brownin or black. It doesn't matter. The culture of corruption, the culture of scamming has found its way into every nook and cranny of our existence as a nation. In the same way that the leadership of Singapore was able to create a culture of anti-corruption, a culture where you don't need burglar bars, a culture where your business place is safe, in the same way that they, from independence from England in 1965 to now, have created a culture of anti-corruption, anti-criminality. Our leaders have created a culture of crime, corruption, and poverty here in Jamaica. But let me conclude the article. Minister Clark has declared there will be full transparency and no stone will be left unturned in unearthing exactly how funds were allegedly stolen, who benefited from such theft, and who organized and collaborated in this. Clark has also promised that the probe will also seek to identify whether assets have been acquired with the proceeds of this fraud. If and when such assets are identified, all legal steps will be taken to restrain these assets with the intention of full forfeiture. The minister's utterances are not just late, they also provide very little comfort to the scores of Jamaicans, many of them elderly individuals who seem set to lose their entire life savings, as any recovery and disposal is likely to be merely cents on each dollar of investment stolen. No Jamaican right now should have any confidence in even one word that comes out of the mouth of the Minister of Finance or the Prime Minister on the matter of transparency, on the matter of thorough investigation, on the matter of bringing anyone to justice. They have a track record of not performing, of not delivering on anything of substance that they promise. And so I fear that those who have lost millions may never see them again. But let us hope for the best. USAIN Bolt made a big mistake, which may cost him over 12 million US dollars. And he's not alone. There's a bigger picture to this that we have not paid attention to for years now. And the big picture is that we, the Jamaican people, you and I, all of us, have been fleeced billions of dollars. In fact, $2 trillion have been stolen from us via fraud by well-placed scammers in suits, in ties, nicely dressed, nice perms, well-tailored suits, excellent speakers. Some of them have PhDs and doctorates, and they're called Dr. This and Dr. That, be they in the public sector or the private sector, be they a prime minister or CEO or wealth advisor. You and I should be greatly outraged, but we have taken our eyes off the ball, and now we're being given a wake-up call in the person of USAIN Bolt, an iconic figure, losing $12 million, more than $12 million US. But what about the rest of us? What about the person who was fleeced $100,000, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million throughout the course of the normal day-to-day life here in Jamaica? In this episode of UIC Liberty TV, I want to discuss with you the culture of corruption and scamming that has developed in our country and how that culture has defrauded so many of us. If you ever pause to think about it carefully and look at how much we have been fleeced, how much we have been defrauded by the very leaders that have stood in our parliament, stood in the seat of our government, appointed persons to lead various ministries and agencies, if we ever take the time to understand and digest, we would be more outraged than we are now about what USAIN Bolt and others have lost. And I'm not trying to diminish their loss at all. I just want to raise our awareness to the appropriate level for us to know, for us to realize, for us to understand that the magnitude of the loss is much greater than what has caused us to become agitated right now. I want you to, for example, take a look at this list. I'm going to show you a list, a simple list. I hope you can see it when I bring it up. Can you see this list? A simple list. Cases of financial fraud in Jamaica. This list begins by showing you what has happened over a 30-year period of political scandals, government officials having to resign, some not resigning, police investigations, Auditor General report. Take this one, for example. December 1991, the Minister of Mining and Energy, Horace Clark, resigned over the scandal involving a waiver of $29.5 million in duties that Shell Company West Indies should have paid the government on imported gasoline. He remained a member of parliament after doing that. That is money that was defrauded from you and me, the Jamaican people. May 2001, Minister of State and the Minister of Finance, Errol Ennis, resigned on May 29, following revelations that at least 7 checks he had tendered to settle gambling debts had bounced. A statement from the Office of Prime Minister said that Ennis had resigned his ministerial post with immediate effect. That's the kind of character we have in our government. April 2002, Dr. Carl Blight resigned as a Minister of Water and Housing in the wake of a report from a 4-member commission that suggested he had acted improperly as minister with responsibility for the Operation Pride program. The report said Blight interfered in the day-to-day management of the Operation Pride schemes and floated guidelines. He resigned in April of 2022. October 2006, Information and Development Minister Colin Campbell forced to resign from cabinet as General Secretary of the People's National Party in October 2006. Approximately a week after opposition leader Bruce Golding divulged information that Trafigura Beira, a Dutch company with business arrangements with the government, made a $31 million transaction to an account called CCOC Associates, which bore Mr. Campbell's signature. Campbell's resignation took effect October 9, 2006. To this day, it has not been resolved. October 2007, Kern Spencer resigned as a parliamentary secretary and Minister of Science and Technology. Now he's coming back to run in Northeast St. Elizabeth, following questions over the Cuban light bulb program when it was divulged that the PNP spent more than $276.5 million to distribute 4 million free light bulbs donated by the Cuban government. Spencer openly wept in Parliament upon hearing the news that the fraud squad and the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions were investigating the incident. Years later, he was freed of the charges after the prosecution failed to prove its case against him and then accused Colleen Wright. July 2009, JLP Minister of Transport and Work Joseph Hibbert resigned 6 months after he was named as subject in a corruption probe by investigators in the United Kingdom. Hibbert, in a letter to the Prime Minister Bruce Golden, said, "This investigation will allow me time and freedom to clear my name and my integrity as former Chief Technical Director in the Ministry of Transport Works during the 1990s, to which the allegations refer." May 2010, government senator and state minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Dr. Ronald Robinson, resigned as senator and junior minister in wake of the Manad Phelps Phillips affair that dogged the government of Jamaica in relation to the Christopher Dudas Coke affair. In his resignation letter to the Prime Minister dated May 20, 2010, Robinson apologized for his role in the Manad scandal and noted his wife's ill health as another reason for his resignation. Why am I sharing all of these with you? I'm sharing these so you can understand where we're coming from, what has brought us to where we are. Yeah? I want us to fully appreciate where we're coming from and how we got here. November 2011, Transport and Works Minister Mike Henry submitted his resignation to Prime Minister Andrew Holness due to concerns over the management of projects by the National Works Agency. Henry's resignation followed revelation that more than $60 million was spent on furniture for the NWA's office. This was in addition to a $102 million refurbishing project that sparked controversy when it was revealed in the Auditor General Special Report on the Jamaica Development Infrastructure Program. Where is Auditor today? Still enjoying the privileges of a minister. September 2013, Richard Azan, junior minister and the Minister of Transport, Works and Housing, resigned in September 2013 under public pressure over his role in the improper construction of shops on land owned by the Clarendon Parish Council. Within 2 months, he was reinstated by Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller after the Director of Public Prosecution announced that no criminal charges would be laid. If it was you and me, the mash up we had, the mash up we stall and take our goods and lock us up. But these people, this is where the culture of corruption comes from. July 2018, Science and Energy and Technology Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley resigned in the wake of scandals that erupted at state-run entities Petrojam and National Energy Solutions Limited that fell under his portfolio. You might recall all of the shenanigans that went on there, the nepotism, the waste of taxpayers' money, the cost passed on to us in higher fuel costs and all of that. March 2019, Minister of Education and Youth Information, Roland Reid, was forced to resign over allegations of corruption and misuse of public funds involving a number of institutions tied to the ministry. That investigation continues while he was getting paid at the same time and enjoying a lovely life after allegedly stealing from the public. And there's more. There's so many more. There's so many more cases of fraud that continues to plague our country. Yeah, we have the Bolt situation now. We have the 50 million alleged fleecing at Sagicor. We have the 35 million at NCB. We have the 750 million bank fraud at that was pervasive. We have the 400 million fraud in Manchester. We have the Ministry of Education fraud. There are so many incidences of fraud all over the country. And why? Why do we have so many cases of fraud? Well, I want you to understand the foundation behind this. There are three things which drive fraud in any institution or any country. Three primary things. And if you have these three things multiplying because of the environment which has been created, because of the environment in which you live and work, then it's going to explode. And so I want us to take a few minutes now to just understand the foundational cause of fraud. What are some of the drivers? And there are three key drivers that I want us to look at tonight, which I think is going to be, quite helpful in our understanding of the subject matter. So let me see if I can share that with you now. Just give me a second here, and we're going to take a look at some of the drivers behind this thing called fraud here. 1 second. Let me see if I can get this up for us. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's take a look here.
If you ask people whether they think stealing is wrong, most of them would answer yes. And yet, in 2013, organizations all over the world lost an estimated total of $3.7 trillion to fraud, which includes crimes like embezzlement, pyramid schemes, and false insurance claims. This wasn't just the work of a few bad apples. The truth is that many people are susceptible not only to the temptation to commit fraud, but to convincing themselves that they've done nothing wrong. So why does fraud happen? While individual motivations may differ from case to case, the fraud triangle, a model developed by criminologist Donald Cressy, shows three conditions that make fraud likely: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. Pressure is often what motivates someone to engage in fraud to begin with. It could be a personal debt, an addiction, an earnings quota, a sudden job loss, or an illness in the family. As for opportunity, many people in both public and private sectors have access to tools that enable them to commit and conceal fraud. Corporate credit cards, internal company data, or control over the budget. The combination of pressure and being exposed to such opportunities on a daily basis can create a strong temptation. But even with these two elements, most fraud still requires rationalization. Many fraudsters are first-time offenders, so in order to commit an act most would regard as wrong, they need to justify it to themselves. Some feel entitled to the money because they are underpaid and overworked, and others believe their fraud is victimless, perhaps even planning to return the money once their crisis is resolved. Some of the most common types of fraud don't even register as such to the perpetrator. Examples include employees fudging timesheets or expense reports, taxpayers failing to report cash earnings, or service providers overbilling insurance companies. Though these may seem small and can sometimes only involve hundreds of dollars, they all contribute to the big picture. And then there's fraud on a massive scale. In 2003, Italian dairy food giant Parmalat went bankrupt after it was found to have fabricated a $4 billion bank account and falsified financial statements to hide the fact that its subsidiaries had been losing money. Because it was family-controlled, corporate governance and regulator supervision were difficult, and the company likely hoped that the losses could be recouped before anyone found out. And it's not just corporate greed. Governments and nonprofits are also susceptible to fraud. During her time as city comptroller for Dixon, Illinois, Rita Crundwell embezzled over $53 million. Rita was one of the country's leading quarter horse breeders and winner of 52 world championships, but the cost of maintaining the herd ran to $200,000 per month. Because her position gave her complete control over city finances, she was easily able to divert money to an account she used for private expenses, and the scheme went unnoticed for 20 years. It is believed that Crundwell felt entitled to a lavish lifestyle based on her position and the notoriety her winnings brought to the city. It's tempting to think of fraud as a victimless crime because corporations and civic institutions aren't people. But fraud harms real people in virtually every case. The employees of Parmalat who lost their jobs, the citizens of Dixon whose taxes subsidized horse breeding, the customers of companies which raise their prices to offset losses. Sometimes the effects are obvious and devastating, like when Bernie Madoff caused thousands of people to lose their life savings. But often they're subtle and not easy to untangle. Yet someone, somewhere, is left holding the bill.
So from that little presentation, you should have seen that there are three primary things which drive fraud. First of all, there needs to be some kind of pressure. The person might be feeling pressure, as in the case of Miss Panton. You heard she talked about family sickness, having some financial pressures due to the impact of the pandemic and so on. And she gave her reasons for that. Then you need to have opportunity. There needs to be a case where there are lax controls. So the internal controls are not strong enough, the governance is not strong enough, and so the person is able to take advantage of weaknesses in the system to be able to do what they do. But number three, there's always some kind of rationalization. Now, this is something we have been doing in Jamaica for a number of years. Persons have been rationalizing stealing from their employers, for example. So don't behave as if we're all nice and innocent saints. Many times in Jamaica, persons steal from their employer by course, normally. So they plan to, thank you very much. So they plan to steal as part of their compensation model. So they will say to themselves, how does this thing work? They'll say to themselves that they're not being paid enough. My employer not paying me enough. And so they will steal. Let's say you're working at a fast food restaurant and every night you're going home, you steal some of the flour or some of the seasoning or some of the meat. You're working on a construction site and you steal some of the supplies and go home. These are all wrong. But people rationalize, and sometimes it is as big as what you have seen in the case of SSL. But bigger than this is our politicians. Every Jamaican know that politicians are thief. Every child growing up hear from their parents, oh, politicians, them are thief, and they've seen how all the while you've seen all kind of news of politicians finding ways to rip off the Jamaican people. Well, there's a ripple effect. This ripples down into society. And as long as politicians keep ripping us off and getting away with it, and you're having, for example, in the last election, you saw where both Andrew Holness and Peter Phillips were trading scandals, who had the most scandals, who is the most corrupt. So they're trading corruption. So Mr. Holness can list 200 corruption cases for the PNP, and Peter Phillips can list 200 corruptions from the JLP. This gets into the psyche of the people and creates even a sense of, this is okay. What I'm doing is reasonable. I can come up with a rational cause for it. Now, on top of that now is where you have opportunities for it. I'll give you one opportunity which you might overlook. The way we run politics in Jamaica, we expect politicians, for example, to come to our communities, big shot, come in them jacket and tie and whatever, and give us some big highfalutin talk and splurge some money in our community. So then buy a drink, so they buy, pay for some food, so they put on free back to school clinic, and they give out books and stuff, and give out free medical services and all kinds of stuff. And we clap and we cheer. In fact, many of you clap and cheer as politicians do these things. What you don't realize is that that approach is preparing your politician to become a thief. Because remember, why is a politician buying your vote? Why should a politician dig into his pocket? Or why should a donor donate to a politician millions of dollars? Yeah, millions of dollars to a politician. When you see these big banks and these big insurance companies and these big car dealerships and so on giving millions of dollars to your political representatives to come into your community and buy your votes, because that's what they're doing. They're getting all of this money to buy your votes. When they're elected, they now have a very big incentives to do things to reward those special interests who have funded their parties. When they dig into their pockets and buy drinks and stuff for you to nice you up to vote for them, they have to go and make back this money. Now, most of these politicians, if you look back at the history, most of them were not rich people. They didn't enter politics as rich people. They enter politics as, middle income or low income in some cases people. Many of your councillors in your communities, they're poor people. But over time, in a very short time while in politics, you notice suddenly they have better cars. They start to build or expand on their homes. They suddenly find the money to buy a gas station or a pharmacy or some kind of bigger establishment. And suddenly these poor, lower income, middle income persons, a person who used to work as a lecturer at UA or somewhere, suddenly start to have money now that you have elected them after they have bought your votes. And you think you had a democracy. No, it was a vote buying exercise. The politicians who's able to come into the community and spend the most money around and nice up the people, they get elected. And when they get elected, somehow, based on the meager salary that they tell you the salary is too small for them, based on that meager salary, somehow their net worth just start to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they're wealthy. All of that is the kind of corruption, the kind of fraud that is going on. Now, let's expand this a little bit. There's a number of big frauds that have happened. I'll give you a quick one. Back in the 1960s, the early 1960s, the then JLP government received a large amount of money to build schools in Jamaica. When the dust settled, only half the number of schools that should have been built were built. Half was built. So each of those schools cost us twice as much to make. The money was fully used up plus some. So what really happened there is that our politicians, then JLP, found a way to steal a large chunk of that money, which made a few low-income, poor, average persons wealthier. We, the people of Jamaica now, from the 1960s, were left to carry the load. How did we carry the load? Very simple. Because we got half the number of schools in the 60s than what we should have had, we had less spaces for children. So you had more crowded classrooms. So we borrowed the money to build, let's say, 100 schools, and we only built 50 schools. But we still had a lot of students who needed a space in the classroom. So now you have overcrowded classes. You also ended up with shift schools. So students didn't get a normal regular school hour full-time. They were now broken up into 2 shifts for the same school. You also had less monies available to pay teachers and so on. Now, because of the failure to use all of the money we borrowed properly, we get substandard students coming out of our schools. Substandard students, therefore, are less productive. Yeah, so they're not going to be as productive as they should be to add to the nation's GDP and push up our quality of living. But we still have to pay back the money that we borrowed, plus interest. And so now we're not producing enough because we have not educated our people well. we have produced a lot of poor quality graduates, but we still now have to pay back this debt. But we don't have the production to pay for that debt. So the debt now is going to mount up because we can't pay on schedule properly, and it's going to multiply and multiply and multiply. That's the 1960s. Then come the 1970s. In the 1970s, we had a lovely prime minister called Michael Manley who loved the poor and wanted to do everything to make the life of the poor better off. So he embarked on some very ambitious social programs to help the poor. Now, nothing is wrong with that. That is very good to want to help the poor and to want to embark on wonderful social programs to help the poor. But before you can help somebody, you have to make sure that you are financially sustainable, that you are financially able, that you have figured out the economics of it all. So Manley forgot about the economics of it and focused on the spending part of it. So he spent a lot of money. He spent it in a way that was not sustainable. He spent it in a way that was not effective. The intentions were good, but the impact of his spending were bad. He also engaged into some utterances and alliances that disrupted our relationship with our major lending partners and our major trading partners. As a result of that, it destabilized our economy tremendously, pushing up the debt while shrinking our productive capacity because people got used to the idea of wanting stuff for free from the government, but not necessarily having the capacity or the training to produce. What happened then? We had to deal with the IMF, and we have to borrow from the IMF, and that came with some serious restrictions and conditions. Now, one of Manley's biggest problems is that while he was doing all these wonderful stuff, there's a lot of corruption going on. His ministers and his team and all kind of people are ripping off the taxpayers blind, okay? Like just ripping off taxpayers. The wonderful socialists who want to make every one of us equal were busy stealing from us in various ways. Just like how the JLP government before him, when they borrowed this big amount of money to big school, them thief off of the money for the most part and leave us the people to pay it back. So too on the Manley in the 70s, them thief all the money while saying nice things and announcing nice programs and poorly managing those programs and being wasteful and running up the debt. The credit card is running up and people are thief like crazy. For example, I'll give you one of the things that happened. You might recall that Manley had a program called Crash Program, where he hired, a bunch of people to sweep the street and to try to make the place clean, like the UIC is talking about. Poorly designed, but he had a program nonetheless. Good intentions. You know what was happening? All one man, I collect 6 check. One man, one woman, I collect 6 check. So they have 6 names on the register. So 6 people work, 6 people sweep the street, 6 people cut lawn and do whatever. But a one man, I get all of them checked there. And the work is actually not done, actually. But we, the people, go and pay this back because the money is borrowed for the most part and it has to be paid back. But no real productivity has taken place. Our productive capacity hasn't been improved. The same thing happens with the road works. We borrow money to fix the road, but we give that contract to some gang leaders in communities and so on. So the road not fixed properly, the road not last long enough, but we have paid all of this money. In fact, much of the money that did not go into the road, it went elsewhere. But we get some poor standard road. Now, because those roads were not there, being properly designed and properly maintained so that we could be efficient in driving and moving goods around the country, we did not get the benefit of those borrowing because the road quality was poor. Same for our school, we did not get the benefit of good schools because the school qualities were poor or half as much. The money we borrowed to train teachers wasn't used effectively, so on. So we have all of these borrowed monies but not getting the productivity out of it, but we have to pay back the loan. So you see that 60s, 70s. Now come the 80s. Mr. Seaga is now the favorite of the Americans. He championed their cause. They were able to use him during the fight with Manley, and they have their arguments. Only for people get murdered. We were taught to kill each other. Okay. Now Mr. Seaga is in. What happened? Whole heap of money flowed into Jamaica from all over the place, from the US. Lots of investment poured into Jamaica. And what did we discover? Whole heap of money was borrowed. Whole heap of corruption took place. Whole heap of money get thief. And then by the time the PNP come back into power, the debt is further ballooned and escalated. So big debts. Okay? By then, the IMF is more stringent with us and things are getting more tight, and the IMF is putting on more pressure upon us. Why am I telling you all of this? I want you to see how we get to one of the most massive fraud that was ever perpetrated on the Jamaican people. That fraud came in the 1990s now. Michael Manley is returned. He gets sick. PJ Patterson takes over. Omar Davis becomes the finance minister. And they had a brilliant idea. Here's what that brilliant idea was. Simple. Borrowing from the IMF is too restrictive. Yes, the interest rate is fairly low, but they always have all kind of rules and restrictions, and you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. We want the freedom to do whatever we want. Nothing wrong with that. I believe we should get rid of the IMF too. However, you should get rid of the IMF for the right reasons, in the right way, and make sure you do the right things. PJ Patterson and Omar Davis had a very different idea. Now, to be fair, it's not just PJ Patterson or Omar Davis. It's the entire PNP establishment in the 90s. Yes, you might have one or two persons that would have had a different idea, but the gang, they were in charge. They were the mafia in town, and they had a massive plan for how they were going to defraud the Jamaican people of billions of dollars. And I'm going to explain to you how they did it. Okay? Watch me carefully. Now, don't get me wrong, because in Jamaica, if you say PNP, it means you're GLP. And if you say GLP, it means you're PNP. You all know I am none of that. I have never been a member of either of the two parties. I am 100% committed to Jamaica, we the people. So I'm going to tell you how the GLP ripped we off in the 1960s, how Manley makes some serious blunders in the 1970s, and then people them thief for money. And in the 80s, how Seaga led a massive influx of money that was then ripped off and left us with the bag to pay back the debt. Now come the 1990s, the reinvention of the PNP, no longer openly socialist. They're now going to play the capitalist game, so to speak. And boy, did they play that crony capitalism game very, very well. Here's what they did. So, because of their mismanagement of our country over the years, severe mismanagement, theft, corruption, costing us billions of dollars. Because of that, every time they go to the IMF, there was restrictive rules. Now, I'm no fan of the IMF. The IMF is a part of an international fraudulent system. Me says so. Big fraudulent system. But that's another story. We, the Jamaican people, chose, through our leaders, our representative, chose to engage the IMF. They never forced us to. They never begged us to. Manley never had to go to the IMF. But because of his policies, his destructive policies that cost us dearly, he had to go to the IMF. Just like how Bruce Golding later on would do the same thing again on the heel of the 2007-2008 situation. Now, here we are in the 1990s. PJ Patterson, Omar Davis leading us, decided that they would like to run with it. They would like to be able to spend money more freely without having the restrictions of the IMF as a schoolmaster keeping them in check. So they had a brilliant idea. Let us go to the private market to borrow money and pay off the IMF and get them off of our backs. And so we now will have the full freedom to do whatever we want to do in the economy. And that's exactly what they did. They gave up the low interest rate loans from the IMF and take on borrowing in the private market fully without any restrictions from anybody. And so now they could be free to borrow and spend in whatever shape or form they want to do. And so that's what they did. So they got rid of the IMF, and now they were able to borrow freely. Now, what does this do? It's very simple. The government now becomes a major competitor with the productive sector to borrow money on the private market at whatever interest rate will allow them to get the money that they need. Now, there's some other twist and turn to it about foreign exchange and all of that kind of stuff, but don't be confused by it. Siaga wrote a beautiful article about it and conflated the whole thing with exchange rate. Don't be confused. The bottom line is, government of Jamaica built an economy that's based on debt. They must borrow and borrow and borrow to keep the scam going. It's like a pyramid scheme where you have to keep adding new people to the scheme to pay out the others. And the scheme continues to build until it finally busts. Now, in the 1990s, it busts. We called it the FinSac era. So because they were now borrowing on the open market, follow me, the government now had to entice lenders. And as the government becomes less and less and less worthy of money to be loaned to it, it had to keep increasing interest rates higher and higher and higher to entice lenders to themselves. So now the banks in Jamaica, Jamaicans abroad, Jamaicans at home, stopped making money available for the productive sector and was shifting most of its money to the government, because the government was giving you a very nice yield on your investment in government papers, in government paper. And so this now is pushing up interest rates. Now, this caused commercial banks to raise their interest rates. Similarly, because Jamaica's productivity was going down, and therefore we're earning less foreign exchange coming in, we start having pressure on the exchange rate as well. So you're having less foreign currencies coming in and more foreign currencies going out to buy stuff. So you start having a rapid depreciation of the Jamaican dollar. How will the government stop this? By the central bank pushing up interest rate further in terms of overnight lending among the other banks, forcing them to push up their interest rates as well. And this caused a cascading effect, because if small businesses, if medium-sized businesses cannot get access to affordable loans, they cannot operate their businesses. And so overnight, the government of Jamaica stole billions of dollars from the Jamaican people through its high interest rate policies and killed off thousands of companies, thousands of jobs. And to this very day, we're suffering and paying the price for those decisions of the 1990s by PJ Patterson and Omar Davis and the PNP. Don't forget, prior to that, we're still paying the cost of the JLP's theft of our monies in the 1960s when they borrow what would be the equivalent of billions of dollars and stole half of it and gave us less school and forced us to pay back these monies. Yeah. Now you compound that with the myriads of corruptions that I've told you about before, all the other corruptions, all the other theft of the Jamaican people's money, in all the other schemes, the rural read kind of schemes and other schemes. When you compound all of that together, we, the Jamaican people, have paid dearly, and we have gone through cycle and cycles of austerity. Cycle and cycle of austerity. And you hear about we have to ban our belly, and we have to do all kind of things to help the government. They freeze our wages. Yeah. They don't give raise of pay for how long to public sector workers. Yeah. They push up our taxes. All kind of things, all kind of fees. We are paying for the massive fraud of these two political parties over the 79 years that they have been in charge of our government. Now, I want to share with you, if I can find it here, let me see if I can find it. I want to share with you a little, well, do I have time for it? I'm not sure if I have time, but you have heard. Now, you have heard recently that the government of Jamaica has entered into an arrangement with the IMF to give us some some money. I want you to listen to it. Let me see if I wonder if I can get it for you. Let me see here if I can share this one with you. See if I can share this with you here. It's a lovely sounding presentation by the Minister of Finance, telling us how well Jamaica is doing and how they are going back to the IMF for some more funds, because Jamaica is doing very well. And I can bet you a lot of people have been applauding this. Yeah. I heard somebody said they're trying to reach me. Give me a little bit. We're going to come on. I'm going to take some calls shortly. But give me a little bit here. Oh, it looked like the phone was ringing and I wasn't even hearing it. Let me see here. I am so sorry. I guess the ringer was off. The ringer was off, it appears. Let me see here. Yeah. All right, you can try me again. But okay, let me not show that video. I'll just explain to you. So, I should read some comments here. It says, PJ was very bad news for Jamaica. Absolutely. Now, let me play it for you. I think that will be useful. Yeah, let me play this for you so we can talk about it. Because what's happening now, we're now going into the next biggest massive fraud. I know we're talking about this USAIN bolting and SSL and so on, but that is painful as it is, bad as it is. What we're about to experience is 1,000,000 times worse. Andrew and Nigel, together with Mark and his group, they are about to do another FinSac on this country. FinSac, is really horrible, I want you to kind of try to appreciate what it means to have a company where you were paying a debt at 30% interest, and then you wake up the next morning and that debt is now at 60% interest, and then you have a penalty for overdraft that brings it to 100% interest, and then shortly thereafter it raises to 120% interest. Now, no company No ordinary company can survive those kind of jump in interest rate. It's like you having a mortgage. You bought a house, and you bought the house for, let's say, $12 million here in Jamaica at the time. You can hardly find one now for that. $12 million. And you got, let's say, a 6% interest rate. 5 years later, when you're going to renew the mortgage because you could not have paid it off. Hello, good night. Give me 1 second. Hold on a second. You couldn't pay off the mortgage in 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, when you go back, the bank said it's no longer 6% interest. It's now going to be 25% interest. That alone would kill you because your wages didn't go up that much to be able to pay it. Just imagine if the bank said 50% interest. You'll never be able to pay off that mortgage. In fact, you won't be able to pay the monthly mortgage payments, and so you would have to give up that house. That's what happened to our business people back then. Hello, good night, welcome.
Yes, Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, who am I speaking with?
Really want Grant. You're speaking of Grant.
Mr. Grant.
We really want to, yes, we really want to have the year still.
Off the air. Okay, well, I'm on the air right now, so another time, eh? All right, take care.
Been trying to reach you still now.
Okay, well, try again. I'm sorry about that, but try again, all right?
All right.
Okay, take it easy. Yes, sorry about that. So let me, beautiful day. So Eagle Bank is the same NSL man involved in the IMF debacle, okay? And Adolf says successive governments have tried to promote Jamaica as a viable offshore banking location. However, the excessive corruption and ineffective management practices and controls have failed us. I'm glad you say that, because what has happened with SSL, you see, there's no way in God's creation that should happen. There's no way that one person should be able to so cover all the steps in the process for dispersing funds to be able to do that. It means that the systems of controls that they had in there, the checks and balances that they had in the company, were absolutely weak. So it means, their internal audit failed, their compliance officer failed, their external auditor failed, the supervisor for that person failed, the manager for the supervisor failed, the director failed, the board of directors failed, the CEO failed. Every single layer of controls remember, we're talking about an organization that's dealing with people's money. And when you're dealing with people's money, internal controls is a critical thing. You guys heard me talk about it before several times. I've spoken about good governance. And that's what we're talking about here, good governance. If SSL had good governance, what has happened would not have happened, at least not for so long. So we're talking now about over 10 years. And you're seeing a lot of this in many of our institutions. But a part of the problem is that we're pushing our people too far to the edge. So we're running out of even internal gatekeepers. Because what happens, if you have a company where everybody is incentivized to engage in fraud, everybody, that affects the whole system of internal controls, because all the gatekeepers are themselves thieves. All the gatekeepers are corrupt. All the gatekeepers are look for a way to beat the system. And so they don't have time to carry out their jobs. And I've noticed this in Jamaica, that when you hire somebody, when you hire them, they wanted a job. They might beg a job. They need a job very bad. And as soon as you hire them, their mind shifts from doing the work that you hired them to do to figure out how they can thief from you. So you find, and if you look carefully, you notice many of our workers, they're at work, but they're not at work. Their body is there, but their minds are not there. Why is this? I put it to you, it's not because our people are inherently bad. Our country is harsh. Our country is difficult. Wages here in Jamaica are very low relative to the cost of living. So remember that pyramid I showed you earlier on? The three reasons for fraud? The pressure, the sociological, the economic pressure on our people is tremendous. And as people go online and they look and they see nice things, they see people looking nice, living, everybody in Jamaica want to live like them they are foreign. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because you should want to. You should want to live nice. You should want to have a decent house. Go to the grocery store and buy a decent basket of grocery. You should want to be able to dress well. Go out for an evening dinner with your wife or your husband or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Enjoy some decent entertainment. Have nice furniture. Have nice things. You're not asking for a lot, but the pressure is so much because your pay can't pay for it. The paycheck that we're getting normally can't pay for the decent lifestyle that we'd like to live. If you notice, when we go away, when we fly out and go foreign, and we go to Canada or the US or so on, and we start to live a decent life, more decent than here. So you go away, here you can't fix your plumbing, you can't fix your roof, you can't fix your driveway if you have one. You can barely pay the rent if you're renting. You just a struggle, everything is difficult. So you go abroad, you land on foreign, and no, I'm not making any excuses. No, I'm talking about the reality. You see, we can say whatever we want, but let's deal with the reality. When we go abroad, we go to America or Canada, and even though things not easy, it's not easy. You have to work hard. But when you work hard, relatively hard, you can afford a decent quality of life. That's why they can't come back. They want to come back, but they can't. When they compare the standard of living that they have there versus here, you can be working the same job overseas that you're working here in Jamaica, the same identical job. But if you're working that job in Canada or the US or England, your standard of living is here. If you're working the same job with the same pay, well, not the same pay, but whatever pay you're getting here in Jamaica, so the same job, a foreign, you can live this standard of living. And the same job here in Jamaica, the standard of living is down here. And so what happened? You want nice things. So you go to work every day, put on your stocking, put on your high heel, put on your nice dress. You want to carry a nice handbag. You want to look, you put on your makeup. You want to look like a diva. You want to look nice. You want to be nice. You want to, and when you look upon the money, when you get your paycheck, you can't even buy, you have to go buy a little mother's party. If you were to just go and try to buy a food at a nice restaurant like 100 or go over to Terra Nova after work, no, you can't do that. Your money done, and so you are tempted. And so now, if the company you're working for have lax controls, so this is now the opportunity. So the pressure is on. The pressure. You want to live big. And by big, I'm meaning just a decent living. So the pressure is on, over here. So the pressure, if you happen to have a child, it's even worse. You have to give them, lunch money, bus fare, the school book. You want them to participate in extracurricular activities. You have to pay for things for that and whatever. If you have one child, if you have two. You and your husband are couple trying to get things going if you have a husband or a wife, and the money just can't seem to stretch because the cost of everything, the light bill alone suck up all of your pay. The water might have leaked somewhere, you didn't see where the leak is, a big water bill come. Light bill take the money, water take the money, school fee take the money, and you know, things for school. And so it is very, very difficult. So that's the pressure side. And then comes now the opportunity side. Is the company weak in terms of its internal controls? And for you to have proper internal controls, you need to have enough staff. Now, sometimes you have staff in different positions, but if all of the staff are distracted by their personal challenges, they might not pay attention to the controls. Yeah, you might not be able to pay attention to the controls. And so the controls get lax. Maybe all the CEO will try to thief himself. So the CEO will try for thief, so now have time to pay attention to the controls. The manager will try for thief, should now have time to pay attention. The supervisor will try for thief, and the staff. And that's how you get a culture now of fraud and theft in this country. And when them look and see how the leaders are behaving, they feel emboldened. They can rationalize. Say, if them do it too, we can do it too. We say, enough of them are getting with things, we can do it. They say the boss a thief the company. The boss a steal from the company. So these are the things that continues to undermine us as a people. Let me see if I can answer a few of the comments here. I'm running out of time. I had so much to share with you, but I can't do it all tonight. I don't have enough time. Let me see if I can get a few of your comments here. I believe Mr. Patterson is leaning toward the Singapore model of governance. Juliana. Juliana Gregory, I have made it very clear now what our model of governance is. So the Singapore has shown us some clear things. Our model is different. Our model is not exactly the Singaporean model. Our model, first of all, is a non-partisan constitutional republic. So the foundation of our model begins with respecting individual sovereignty. That's something that almost no country in the world does. Most countries are built on a model which kind of see government as God. We in the UIC do not see government as God. We believe fundamentally in empowering the individual, empowering each citizen to be as productive and as prosperous as they can possibly be. So we begin with protecting individual sovereignty. Then we build on top of that now a strong system of governance to ensure proper checks and balances that eradicates corruption at the core, beginning with the leadership, top-down approach to zero tolerance of corruption, zero tolerance of fraud. And we work through that now into ensuring that we provide certain fundamental basics that will reduce the pressure on people to become corrupt. So our model ensures every Jamaican is a property owner. So your family is endowed with property. So you're set. As a Jamaican, you will have something to call your own. Your family will have a residence. You're going to have a place to live. And it's going to be decent. It's going to be modern. It's going to be upstanding. If you already have a place and it needs to be refurbished, to be brought up to standard, we're going to help you to do that. So if you have an unfinished house, we're going to finish it. You have a finished house, but it has kind of broken down, we're going to fix it up. If you're a squatter, we're going to change that and make sure you have a decent residence to live in. Everybody needs a quality place in which to live. That's the foundation on which you're going to build. So we have a policy of making every Jamaican a property owner. It doesn't mean every single person will have, it means every family will have something. And we don't want it to be a matches box. We don't want no ghetto, no zinc fence, no nothing. So we're going to do away with all of the garrison and ghetto and squatter things and put up quality residences or modify existing residences to make them quality residences. And so that's what we're going to do. So every child must have quality nutrition because we understand the importance of building our human capital. So we're going to be in a massive campaign to rescue our children and by extension, our nation, our people, by getting all of us to a quality nutritional standard for all of our children. So nutrition, quality education, a different education model that shifts away from the passing exam approach to the building competency as a whole person approach. Mind, body, and personality, understanding relationships and building good relations, business, family, and very importantly, mastering money, understanding money so that you can make effective decision, money-making decision, money management decisions, and supporting that with having quality technical skills that allows you to be able to be a value added in society. So our education model is an empowering model, not the foolishness we have now. So if we make sure our kids have the nutrition, the education, the healthcare, and the housing that they need, the family is well set to do very well. So many of the ideas that Michael Manley had in terms of the lifting up our people, but we're going to do it the right way, the financially sustainable way, the way that is going to ensure that we eliminate poverty with an economy that's bottom up and a crime and corruption fighting that is top down, that we go after the big ones, the big men and women who are thieving from our people, and stop that. And we have some key industries we're going to use to do that. Number one is organic farming. On the same level as the Netherlands, and even better, using technology and our advantages to becoming the organic food capital of the world. Harvesting our water to becoming a net exporter of water in a world where water is becoming the most important commodity. And investing in eco-friendly community tourism that is nationwide, so making all of Jamaica the all-inclusive product. So everywhere, every community, every street, every lane is a part of our tourism product. Clean, it smell good, it look good, and feel good like a tourist resort. So no more the zinc fences, no more of the bad roads, no more of the lacking sidewalk and lacking street address and lacking signs. Fix all of that. Manicure the country. Well managed, well maintained, beautiful country. And we're going to more than quadruple our tourist inflow and do that at the community level so that the economy is bottom-up driven. So the small man quickly no longer the small man. It's like how Singapore was able to bring their country to a level where their people no longer are available to do the menial jobs, so to speak, because they have just been risen up by their government. And they have to import people to do the menial tasks. We will get there too. But first, we have to build these infrastructure in. And so that's the model of our government, a very, very different model from the one we're used to. But I probably went on for too long and missing out on all the comments here. What am I missing? They created the Dons. Oh, let me show you something before I go tonight. My time is running up shortly. Let me see if I can get it for you. Give me a minute here. you just reminded me by talking about rooting for the underdog, because we are the underdog for sure. I know that. But let me see if I can find it for you. Where is this? Where is this? Can I find it here? Let me see. Let me see if I can find it. Somebody's writing me here. Okay, let me see if I can find this here. I think it came to me through let me see here. What's his name again? I think it's this, eh? Please bear with me and see if I can find what I want to share with you tonight. I had so much to share with you, but I just don't have the time to share it all with you tonight at all. So I'm gonna have to do a part 2 to this. We can talk about it. All right, here it is. I hope I'll be able to share it with you. Let me see here. Watch this now. Give me 1 second. All right, I think I have it now. I think this will work. Let's see. Can you see that? So this is a little advertisement, is it? That we have some wonderful folks that have worked on this, particularly Mr. Douglas Harper. You haven't seen him for a while, but we'll see him soon.
Did you know that Jamaica is not a poor country? It's merely a poorly run country. You see, the colonial system of governance that we inherited from our British colonizers was created to keep the rich wealthy and to make the poor poorer, while concentrating power in the hands of a few, facilitating corruption and nepotism. Help us change this abusive, corrupt system of governance by electing UIC candidates who are committed to ending the mass corruption, poverty, and crime that have been plaguing our nation for 79 years under the two colonial parties. These two parties rely on funding from big corporations that have their own private special interests that benefit them, but not you. Instead, let us fund our own movement to ensure that the United Independence Congress is on the ballot, so that you can vote for a system that works for and benefits you, the people, and not just the few. Help us raise money for the upcoming local government elections. If just 5,000 of us donate 5,000 Jamaican dollars each, we would raise 25 million Jamaican dollars to fund our campaign. Your donations will fund representatives that come from your constituencies, your municipal divisions, your communities. Jamaica needs your help. Join us in building a new Jamaica powered by you. Let's save Jamaica now.
Yeah, so that's a little ad that is inviting you all to contribute to us being able to mount a campaign here in Jamaica. As you know, the UIC is not funded by the PSOJ oligarchy like the other two parties. We depend entirely on donations from individuals like you to be able to compete on your behalf and to represent you in the next election. So I hope all of you will take this opportunity to consider contributing to the UIC's campaign budget, which at the moment is quite small. I hear there are lots of questions and I feel so bad. I'm going to try to see if I can run through some of them. Let me see if I can get through some of your questions. All right. All right. Yes, Carl Blake, we can raise the money. I know we can. Somebody said, big up Statsman, Adolf. McCallum, yes, I went to Stats. I was head boy at Stats in the 1990, actually. Head boy 1990. Dismantle the Jamaican oligarchy by cutting off political funding. Yes, the UIC would end the situation where the PSOJ can control our politics by funding political parties. Can we have a panel discussion with all the constituent representatives and hear the fervor for wanting a change in Jamaica? Sure. I mean, tell me more. How would you like that to be done? How would we organize that? Carl Blake here from Stats as well. Wonderful. Good to know. Good to know. Let me see if I can get some more here. We saw that already. Would you propose a law against Chinese land buyers or any foreign land buyers, period? Thank you for that, Philippa. We do need to have some laws around owning land in Jamaica. I believe, land should only be owned by the people of Jamaica. We should not have any foreigners owning land in Jamaica. They can lease land to do things and so on, but they shouldn't own any land here. But I'm open to discussing that further with you. The whole world pray Mr. Patterson wins the next election. Prayer works. The world was shocked and prayed for the young American athlete who had a heart attack on the field. He recovered. Absolutely, prayer is powerful. Thank you for that, Jojo. What else do we have here? All right. You guys are asking great questions in the comment section. Let me see them. Let me see some of the questions. What's the weather condition in Alberta? I don't know. Question here. How would you dismantle Jamaica criminal oligarchy? Well, the short answer is start at the top and investigate and make sure we have some serious penalties for persons engaged in crime. I've talked about our crime policy before. It's more comprehensive. You have to do a number of things. You have to work on the education end, the economic end, the criminal investigation end, the border control end. So there are a number of areas. So another time I'll get into details on that. How you tackle the cooperation. Rowena, I am not too sure what you mean by that. You have to elaborate on that. What is the cooperation that you're referring to? Let's see. They created the Dons to remain in government and retain the seats in parliament. In part, yes, that's true. This sounds like a 50-year plan. How will you find these investments, especially that your government will inherit a millennium of debt? It's amazing. I've often heard the question, people believe that we can't achieve much because of what has been done in the past. It's not so at all. I mean, Jamaica has a tremendous amount of potential. Our government takes in more than, $900 billion a year. A lot of that is wasted, stolen, scammed from the Jamaican people. Yes, we have debt to repay and so on, but if we make some of the basic changes the UIC is talking about, you see we would expand our GDP so very quickly. You'd be amazed. So it's not easy, but what are your options, Adolf? The option is we continue to do what we're doing now and get the same results, or we do something different. So don't worry about the fact that it's not going to be easy. Worry about the fact that we can't afford to continue to do what we're doing now. Jamaica desperately needs a model like yours, but those same people in Jamaica will fight you, won't want better. I can assure you, young conservative, that one of our biggest problems will be ourselves. Yes, We're very good at self-sabotage. We can fix the country, but we can only do it if we decide to cooperate in making it done. So you're correct. Am I for term limits? NAH, done? Not really. I don't really see the value of term limits. The reason for term limits is if you have a corrupt system, then you want to limit the amount of terms that a corrupt person has. But if you have a system with good checks and balances, then the real term limit is set by the people who decides who they want. You don't want to artificially fire somebody just because they have done 2 terms. There's no point. That's really foolish, actually. I know it sounds good, and they put all these things up. Let's have real solution. The real solution is to kick out big money out of politics, to get rid of big money by having a 100% publicly funded system. If you have that, you've just solved the biggest part of your problem. Number 2, have real checks and balances, like what the UIC has. Have your Senate being elected and independent of your House, and have both House and Senate being independent of the executive branch, and then have the 3 of them hold each other accountable by having natural incentives in place for them to do their job. The way you have it now, it's convoluted, lots of conflict of interest, and so having term limits with bad systems only create more bad systems, right? So you have fake term limits. A person is forced out, but they do all kind of other things behind the scenes, or they end up changing the constitution at some point, like many other countries do that. Initially put in term limits and then they get rid of it. So let us not go for these sound good approaches. Let's go for real, proper internal controls. Yeah. Let's see what else. Our political system is operating according to the Hegelian dialectic, like 2 opposing narratives. That's correct. That's a strategy. It's called divide and conquer, and that's why we have a 2-party system in Jamaica. It was deliberately designed that way in order for them to continue to divide us, distract us, and deceive us, and they've done that very, very well. Throughout the course of things. We must master money and how it works. This is what they hide from people. Yes, Carl. If I tell you this, if we only educate our people properly, like real proper education, not what we have, the foolishness that they've done with us. If we have real proper education of our people, we don't need as much of the regulations they're talking about. For example, I don't know if you notice, we have a whole heap of laws. I mean, there are tons of laws, tons and tons of laws. When there are only 2 ways, only 2 bad things you can do in life. There are 2 basic things you can do that's bad. You can either use force against somebody, which is violence, like force, unprovoked force, where you kill me, or you enslave me, or you rob me, right? Force, physical force. Or you defraud me, force or fraud. Those are the 2. So you really don't need a book this big of laws. That if you were to narrow it down, it's very simple. You may not use force or fraud to take what belongs to somebody else. You don't need to give it a whole heap of different names and schemes and so on. The same thing for money. If our people understood money, politicians would not be able to trick us. But because we're dunce, they've made us dunce. They've designed a system where most of us are afraid of mathematics because of the way that they have done it. Most of us are afraid of economics because they've made it so convoluted and we feel like we can't understand it. When all of those subjects are actually quite simple. Math is very simple. Math is the foundation for you to be able to think and reason effectively. Economics is the core for you to be able to make good financial decisions. And so if you don't understand math and economics because of a convoluted, poorly designed system of education, then you cannot be a strong citizen, you cannot be an intelligent citizen, you cannot be a good voter because you don't know who you vote for. You're just being tricked all the time. So we are indeed, fully dunce, especially those with PhDs and master's degrees. Forgive me, I didn't mean to offend you, but a lot of us who are very educated by the world standards are actually dummies, and you can see that in many of them. Our intellectuals come on TV and talk every day, and they can't do anything. They will never get together and push out the people who are killing us, messing up our economy and whatever. But they come on, they can talk, they can explain everything to you, they can say whatever, but they cannot do anything. They're a bunch of talking heads. You hear them on radio talk show, they can talk forever on radio talk show programs or television programs. They can talk, but they can never, if they're so bright, why are they being ruled by dummies? All the people who we have on our TV and radio who are talking nice, and they have lots of big words. They can tell you everything. They can come and analyze SSL and analyze all the stuff that's going on, but they will never organize a political movement and get rid of these crooks that are running our country. They'll never do it. Why? Because they're not that bright after all. They're actually, intelligent sounding dunce people. They can't reason, they can't analyze, they can't solve any problem. They can talk about it. They can have an academic position on things, but they really can't do anything. They're weaklings. That's why they allow people like Andrew Holness to be our prime minister. That's why they allow the PNP and JLP to do what they've done to us over the last 79 years, while they talk, at the university, on TV, on radio. They have talk shows forever. They've been talking for 50 years while Jamaica is going down to the dumps. If you want to see people who have sense, they get in the trenches and they get things done. They get up off their behind, they get up from around their computers, and they do things that will make a difference. So most of these people that you hear talking, these talking heads, these bright people, these really smart people, you see them cluck behind the two parties. You'll see them at their conferences in their green shirts or their orange shirts. You'll see them going out there and talking on their behalf to say all kind of foolishness, which is deceiving the people of Jamaica. Yeah. And so they buy into this. They'll intellectualize away why we need to keep the system the way it is. Yeah. So anyways, I've said enough on that. There's too much cronyism in Jamaica. Always have been people walking around being called Dr. this and Dr. that. Yeah, look at that. We have had Dr. Omar Davis as our finance minister, Dr. Peter Phillips, and now Dr. Nigel Clark. And look at the country. I mean, these people can't even manage an economy. They can't manage. How can they advise us as a people? They could not manage. They run up Jamaica's debt to $2 trillion and have nothing to show for it. And we're still trusting them to lead us. They messed up our country, messed up our economy. When the world is growing economically, we have been stagnant. And now we have fake growth because they know that we don't know anything. Eh? So now they're telling us that we have growth. What kind of growth is that? During 2000, the pandemic, the economy declined more than 5%. And now they tell us we have growth. That's not growth. You're simply returning to where you declined 5%. So here you were. You were dunce before, and then because of learning loss meaning, they locked down your school and lock your kids out of school and they weren't learning anything. Now they're duncer. Then you reopen school and the child is picking up back and getting back to the level that there was before. And then you say, oh, that's growth. No, that's not growth. That is recovery. And not even any meaningful, you're going back to where you were before. The Jamaican people today are suffering as much today as they were suffering before. In fact, they're suffering even more now. But anyways, I have said enough on that. I was hoping to answer some questions, but there are just too many questions here tonight. I can't see. I'm trying to pick out some. All right, so I'm running out of time. I've run out of time completely. So I'm not going to try any further to get to any more questions. But let me say thank you for sharing your time with me tonight. We learned about the three pressures that's causing fraud in Jamaica. We learned about the culture of corruption, where it's coming from. FinSac being one of the biggest fraudulent activity, and I hope we will get the time to revisit and to have the courage to be outraged about, and to realize that it's not just USAIN BOLT that was defrauded. All of us have been defrauded by our own government over the last 79 years. And so now we have to do something about it. And so tonight I want to leave you with this video again that I showed earlier on. You can do something about it. Yes, let's have a part 2. You can do something about it. We must do something about it. And the way you can do something about it is to help us by taking charge of this movement, becoming a major contributor, and helping us to be able to represent you in the next election. So I'm going to leave you with this again. Have a good night, and thank you so much for your time, your talent, and your treasure that you have shared with us thus far. Oh, and look at that. It won't allow me to share that with you again. So have a good night. Take care. All the best.